Technically, they could have done it from home. He did say that. She's like, yeah.
All right, here we go. Would everyone please rise for the pledge and remain standing for a moment of silence? Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Pelletieri for the superintendent's report.
Thank you. I think initially we're going to start with our external auditors. And Joe Keem is here from EFPR. Joe?
Good evening. Hopefully my glasses do not fog up during the presentation. You should have a couple of documents in front of you. There's a one-pager, which is kind of like a high-level discussion of our audit results. We actually met with the audit committee the other night to go through the financial statements in detail. We had reviewed them with John and his staff the week prior. So It is our intention to issue an unmodified opinion. That's an unqualified or a clean opinion that the financial statements do present fairly in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Our auditor's report on the extra classroom activity fund will also be unmodified. And in addition, because the district expends more than $750,000 of federal money, we have to do a single audit of the federal awards, and that opinion is also an unmodified opinion. Part of our audit entailed considering internal control to develop an audit plan to allow us to render an opinion on the financial statements. We do not audit internal control to the level that to render an opinion on internal control, but the whole purpose of it is to evaluate internal control to develop an audit plan. Having said that, if there are any internal control matters that rose to the level of material weakness or significant deficiencies, we would be required to report those, and I'm happy to report that there are none. You have an exceptional finance team in place here. We did this one the old-fashioned way. We were in the field doing the audit. I want to say probably this year of my client base, probably 3/4 of them were done remotely as opposed to in the field auditing. But everything that we asked for, we got timely, nothing held back in terms of what we could look at. You've got an exceptional team in place. If you were to look at the district-wide financial statements, and I believe John forwarded those to you, you're going to see that expenses exceeded revenues by about $95 million. I will simply point out, however, that of that $95 million is $112 million. That's an actuarial number related to other post-employment benefits. That's post-retirement health insurance. The real important numbers are at the fund level. And at the general fund level, there was a positive change in fund balance of $9.6 million this year. So you were able to increase your reserves. New York State has a variety of reserves that school districts are allowed to take advantage of in order to basically put dollars aside to cover those expenses, as well as continue to keep your fund balance, unassigned fund balance at the state mandated 4% level. There is a schedule at the bottom that just basically breaks down what the fund balance consists of. And you can see at the end of the year, there was $62.8 million in fund balance. That's up from $53 million a year earlier. So that was a positive change of $9.6 million. There is also in the package a rather big Excel spreadsheet that is multicolored. This is actually not part of the audit, but I know I use it more as an educational tool, only because I believe there's, certainly Dr. Pelletieri is new to the district, as well as some new board members, just to get an understanding of the history and what Sachem has been and what it's been through and currently where it is, because I think everything is impactful. If you go to the farthest column to the left, 2010, you're going to see that there was positive fund balance of about almost $42 million. There was a solid number in the unassigned fund balance, as well as there was a solid number in the reserves. Over the next 5 years, $36 million basically eroded from fund balance. And that's pretty much because revenues either did not increase or did not increase at the same rate that expenses increased. So over that 5-year period of time, there's about a $36 million burn in fund balance, such that at the end of 2015, you were down to $5.5 million in general fund balance, and your unassigned fund balance, that's that state targeted 4% number, was down to $16,000. And what unassigned fund balance is really intended to cover are things that you couldn't really budget for, things that, unforeseen. And to have a district of this size, to have, number one, $5.5 million of fund balance and $16,000 in fund balance is not where you needed to be. So obviously changes happened. You made some hard decisions. You closed some schools, and you did a lot of things that you needed to do in order to rebuild that fund balance. And over the last 5 years, it's now built up to just under $63 million. You've established reserves, again, state mandated reserves where school districts are allowed to put money aside. You've got the unassigned fund balance back at the 4% level that the state suggests that the school district should be at. And you've gone a long way to basically reestablishing the financial stability of the district. And the reason why I mention this is we are now, I guess, I hate to use the term cliche, a new normal, but not only do we have COVID, but we also have state budget cuts. So school districts are hit. There's been a 20% cut right off the top. Is it permanent? Is it temporary? I don't think at this point in time anybody knows. So in last year's numbers, there was about $1.7 million that the district was given. They basically said, this is funding that you're due, but we're not going to give it to you. So it's sitting as basically deferred revenue. Then on top of it, you take a look at all of the additional costs that you have related to COVID and compliance and things like that. I guess the point that I'm making is that a lot of fiscal discipline went into getting the district where it is right now. And what that has allowed you to do is basically have some room to survive things like cuts in state aid. And for a district like, Sachem, roughly 39 to 40% of your total revenue is state aid. So 20% of what you get is somewhere in the vicinity of $25 or $26 million. Again, is it permanent? Is it temporary? I don't think anybody knows. I think my only point here is that you've made tough decisions to get you to this point, and there's going to be some tough decisions that you're going to need to make going forward. Because, again, the state aid hasn't been there. The state tends to balance its budget on the backs of school districts because school districts are major recipients of state aid. And on top of that, you've got all of the compliance costs that you have to deal with. So my only takeaway from this is that you have to remain smart and disciplined, and in terms of spending what you need to spend in order to educate the children. And that's really, I guess, my only point. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Okay.
Joe, thank you. I want to commend the office, the staff as well, John's folks and all the people that play a role in that. I was on the finance committee meeting the other night, and just their support as well. Really an incredible job from what I've seen. I've been doing this for 12 years in educational leadership, and to see a report as clean as that was really remarkable. So thank you.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to thank you as a member of the audit committee for a long time. I appreciated all your insight the other night that you gave to the audit committee as well now as to the board. And again, John O'Keefe, thank you for the hard work over the past years. And it took us a long way to get here. And for those of us who were here when we had 16,000 left in reserves and what we were facing, we've come a long way, and hopefully your words tonight ring true with everybody, and we keep working towards keeping Sachem financially stable. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura.
Continue. Thank you. Good night, Joe.
Good night, thank you.
Take care.
Good night. Thank you. I'd like to jump into continue my superintendent's report around a proposed remote learning academy. This is something that the team here has been working on for some time now. And I can't give particular details as of yet because we are still working through it. But we are concerned about our remote learners. We've been concerned from the outset. We've had plans that we've worked through with our remote learners, and I think we've settled on a model that is really going to be exciting and really a great opportunity for our students and our staff. And what we're looking to do is build a remote learning academy. And what the remote learning academy would provide for us is live teaching instruction, three to 4 days a week for all of our remote learners at the secondary level, grades 6 through 12. Ms. Trombetta and Mr. O'Keefe have done a lot of work on this as well, so they may jump in at some times. But what we're looking to do is provide all of our remote learners. We would put them on the rosters of teachers that would be working from 2 p.m. We would have periods in this remote learning academy from 2 p.m. to 5:40 p.m. They could take up to 5 classes during the remote learning academy. They would be taught by our teachers and our staff, as many as we can get. There would be class caps around 30 or so with students in the remote learning academy: math, English, social studies, science, foreign language, AP courses. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I'm missing. Is there an elective or two or some areas? No electives.
Support for E&L.
Support for E&L. Thank you. Yes. So again, live teaching, 3 to 4 days a week, 40-minute periods with a teacher, with the opportunity to interact with teachers and peers, other students as well. As you recall, the model we have with teachers teaching their regular full-time jobs during the day and then putting work in to Google Classroom for students is not a sustainable model. It's not something that we feel we should be continuing to do. We've been trying to improve that system, been able to do it a little bit here and a little bit there. We did create a remote learning task force, which has been meeting constantly and going out in the field, speaking with people, speaking with parents. We're adding parents to the remote learning task force. We have SEL, we have guidance, we have teachers and administrators. The important piece here, I think, again, is live instruction for our students. And those lessons will be recorded each day so that if a student at 4 p.m. on Wednesday needed to help mom and dad with something, or they're part of some organization or something where they couldn't be there during that particular time, they could, in fact, get that recording and do that work the next day and then be prepared for class that next day. So it's real, it's a sea change from what we're doing right now with our remote students. And that is not the only change as well. We are looking at special education, remote learning changes. Our students, we were able to, through the movement of some teachers and staff and students, all while still meeting IEPs, of course. We were able to create a program where we have live teaching during the day by our special education teachers for our students. I'm just looking for the letter now that we're sending out to parents. We will be able to consolidate 4 special education classes, which affords us the opportunity to have 4 teachers and teaching assistants available to provide remote instruction for our special education students during the day. So that is a big change for our students as well. More live instruction for our students. That's what we keep trying to go back to. And then we have another system in place. We have been working with our teachers and our administrators around our hybrid students. As you know, our hybrid students are in one day, out the next day, and we do not have live streaming at this time, so kids are just doing work that is being assigned to them. What we'd like to do is to take a look at our bell schedule, and by taking some time off of each period, that was suggested here actually at a meeting, we could take 2 minutes off of each period, which would give us time. We take some time off of homeroom, which would give us time, and then arrival and dismissal giving us time as well, where we'd have between 20 to 30 minutes for our staff to each day have office hours for our hybrid students. So hybrid students, special education students, remote learning academy, I mean, a huge, again, I think, sea change in terms of what it is that we're able to provide for our students during these times, which have, we know, been extremely difficult. John, Patty, I don't know if I left anything out that you feel like would add to the conversation.
Anyone have any questions on that portion of the update? Sure, Laura.
Thank you, Alex. So Dr. Pelletieri, for our special ed students that are remote learners, that the teachers are now, so during the day, you have a teacher dedicated to the remote learner special ed students that are home?
Elementary
In
level.
the elementary. So is that teacher, so let's say you're a second grade teacher, do you have like, so you're second grade 15-1, is there another second grade like 12-1, or, so how did that break down? Is it broken down by sections, like 12, like 15-1, 12-1, 8-1?
Mrs. Trombetta, I'm sorry. Mrs. Trombetta, if you
Can you use the mic, please?
'cause they
Oh,
can't-
sorry.
I'm sorry. No, I just want them to be able to hear the answer
Okay.
so that there's no question later.
No.
Any delay or?
So yes, the classes would be divided down by 12-1s, 15-1s, 8-1s, those 4 teachers. And there's
Okay.
also, that's also occurring already over in Waverly with an 8-1 teacher taking on the remote learners.
So I guess I wanted to just make sure that the students will be grouped by where they should be, and with a teacher that's dedicated to that section, whether it be 12-1, 15-1. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Rob?
Yeah, Dr. Pelletieri, just with regards to the Remote Learning Academy, from 2 p.m. to 5:40 p.m., is that specifically to full remote students, or does that also include hybrid students that are home 3 days a week?
No, it would be full remote students.
So are we addressing the live streaming or recording for those students that are in a hybrid model?
So what we're doing now is piloting. That was part of the remote task force report. They are piloting live streaming at Linwood, at Nokomis, at I just spoke with our assistant principal downstairs in Somerset yesterday. Had a great remote learning experience with distance learning through the live stream. So we are building that at every level. I want to see replication now across grades and across buildings so that we can do more of that. We're trying to build that. In terms of the bandwidth and allocation of resources, it's difficult. It's not something, again, that we can snap our fingers around. We can get there. It will take time. And so the Remote Learning Academy now allows us, I would like to start that, given approval of a memorandum of understanding of agreement and approval of the board. I would like to start that by October 19th, which is 2 weeks from now, less than 2 weeks from now. Kick that off if we possibly could. And we can begin interviews immediately for teachers. The idea is to get that started right away, but we are still going to try to build that, Mr. Scavo, still trying to get those live streams up and running. You may have heard today some feedback from North High School, and North, unfortunately, has transitioned to distance learning these past few days, a week, and will continue so into next week. The students will come back next Wednesday. But today we provided them with a bell schedule last night, and people taught through the bell schedule, and teachers were home teaching through that system, and kids were all together in class. And it's a system we might be able to replicate here in school where they're together as opposed to them all being home. It's something that we're trying to build and continue to work at.
Now I know we don't have the technology, the Wi-Fi capabilities to be, for all of the lessons to be live streamed. Do we have the technology to provide laptops or Chromebooks to teachers, or the use of the cameras that we purchased to be able to just record the lesson without Wi-Fi bandwidth and be able to post that lesson every single day? I understand that there's processes involved in possibly editing the video, but the thing is that the kids that are seeing it live, the kids that are seeing it live, that video should be good enough for kids to see it recorded at home. Do we have the ability, because we don't need bandwidth for that? And I think what I'm hearing in the community is that during those off days when those hybrid students are home, okay, they're missing some materials that sometimes they're tested on during the school day, okay, that maybe they didn't get. or they're being sent, so much paperwork to kind of teach themselves. So that we have the ability to at least be able to record those lessons on a daily basis, and then post them. So that
So,
the students at home that maybe on an AC day,
Mhm.
could be able to watch it.
so there's a couple pieces to that. One, let me just say that I'm hearing from parents that kids think that their day off, in other words, not from school, is a day off, and that they're not doing work on those days because they don't have school those days. So let me say that cannot be further from the truth, please. You're hearing it from the superintendent. I'm sure you've heard it from your parents. I don't believe them, believe me, believe it. It's school still. It is not a day off. So yes, there is work put into Google Classroom for them. And I hate that term, teaching themselves, but I'm not sure really how else to describe it. The teachers are providing the work. They're providing support. This new bell schedule, which we could start also on October 19th, which would release kids a little bit earlier than they're being released now, and would give teachers more time, almost a half hour. We've talked about that. You, Mr. Scarborough,
No, absolutely.
would give them more time for the hybrid kids in particular, and that's why that's a key component to
I guess
this.
my question is, do we have the technology
So
to
that I
provide
will-
them to be able to record, the video, to
Mhm. Yeah.
record one lesson, to be able to upload it and
Right.
at least be able to see the same lesson that the kids saw that day, even if it's repetitive to what they're going to see the next day.
Well, it shouldn't be. They shouldn't be getting, the same thing day after day. So I have to learn that I don't have all the answers, and so I have to look into. Do we have the capability? We can store it. Where would we store it? We can put it in the cloud, I guess, in Google Classroom, so there's no storage issues. And then I just have to check to make sure that we contractually are able to do something along the lines of that.
Matthew, then Bill.
Hi, Dr. Pelletieri. So tonight I saw some real positive comments on social
That
media
was a
today.
bit of a change.
So that was nice
that
to
was
see.
welcomed. Yes.
Okay. So I just have a question. Who's teaching the remote secondary special ed
Matthew, are you
students?
turned on there?
Hello?
There you go. You can
Sorry.
lean in a little bit.
I'm sorry.
It's not Zoom.
Who is, this is like at my house. Who's teaching the remote secondary
Yep.
special ed students? I'm sorry.
They have their teachers and their special education teachers, but there isn't time to do there isn't opportunities right now to do a lot of that live teaching. Patty, am I correct in that?
There you go.
Maybe just stay there, Patty.
So the secondary model for special ed is something we're still working through because right now they're still assigned to their classroom teacher that is teaching during the day. So they're still meeting through Google Classroom and Google Meets. That is where the focus is right now on trying to streamline the virtual teaching for them. So they're part of the class as opposed to just meeting in Google Classroom. So that is where our work needs to continue, is the secondary level for our special ed students.
So the model I presented tonight, which was put together by our OSS, our folks there, Dennis, that model is for the elementary level. We're working to try and create a similar model. Again, this work takes place all day, every day. So we're looking at that model as well.
You're welcome.
I don't mean to put anyone on the spot, Chris, John, whoever it may be, but just questions that I have. Do we have at least one computer in each of the classrooms, or do we not even have that?
Yes, we do.
So in the high school, we have one computer in each classroom, and that is hardwired to
There's
the
a hardwired teacher computer in every class.
right to the internet, right?
Correct.
Yes.
So they have internet in the room for that, and do all of those computers have cameras built into them?
No.
They're not
No,
built in.
they're similar to the style you see on top of that monitor.
Well, that's what I'm saying. A camera that's built into the computer itself, the monitor.
Yeah, it's sitting on top of it.
Right,
So it can be
exactly,
moved.
precisely.
We plug it in.
That's what I'm saying. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So now I don't use Google Meets. I use Zoom when I teach, right? And I was paying for it myself out of my own pocket because I wanted to be able to do this last year. And since then, the school district where I work has picked up the tab and they paid for Zoom for everybody. Or you could use Google Meets. We use Google Classroom as well, but I don't use Google Meet. Is it with Google Meet? Is it possible to record? Do they allow us to record to the cloud? Does anybody know?
Yeah.
I'm not specifically
I thought
aware of
they
how
did.
this.
Yes,
right?
you
how it
can
works.
go into Google Meet,
All
click
right.
record, and it would go up to,
All right.
I
I
believe it would
that's
go up to the
still
cloud.
A version, though, that Mr. Renda is upgrading the district to. I don't know the specifics of it yet, but I know we're going to a higher level
Yes, we are.
of Google.
So but we may not have enough bandwidth for every teacher to record.
That's simultaneously.
During any given period during the day. That could be a problem.
Right
It's
now,
it's not even a matter of Wi-Fi. It's a matter of
The
how much bandwidth
Mhm.
to run that through the district's network out to the cloud to Google.
Right. So because if we had that bandwidth, and I know there's discussions about trying to make that happen quickly, then of course that one computer in the classroom with the camera could record the lesson, and the students who are home on their hybrid day off from being in the building would be able to view that lesson, and we could work towards that pretty quickly, I would think. Right.
working towards that. That's right. There are issues with BOCES in terms of increasing the bandwidth, but again, nothing is stopping us, and we are continuing to work towards that end.
All right. Do we have any sense of how? I know I saw something in our packets about the increase of the bandwidth. Do we have any sense of how quickly that could happen, or no?
I think the bandwidth itself could increase rather quickly. The problem we've also learned now, and again, I'm not a techie, so I don't understand exactly how this works, but obviously the internet is coming into the building through fiber. It hits a switch coming in, and then it goes into our network. We can increase what's coming in. Where it hits our building at the switch or whatever is not large enough to handle that capacity without increasing and installing new hardware. So we would work with BOCES to hopefully source that hardware through them and have it installed as part of this upgrade.
Right. So the only way we could potentially maybe envision, like Rob was mentioning, having lessons recorded and then posted for students is we would have to rely upon teachers to actually take the recording home and put it online themselves.
We're also
That would
looking
be-
at
that would be
extra
a potential
period
option.
in the
I'm sorry?
afternoon, giving them the more time in the afternoon by taking time away from each period in homeroom. They'll have a longer period of time to work independently on the Google Classroom and all of that. We're hoping at that point they'll be taped lessons as well, so they can post them at different times.
Right. Okay. So, but they wouldn't be able to necessarily post from the school because we lack the bandwidth to do that.
Mhm.
So we really need cooperation from the teachers to be able to take things home and use their own internet to get things online as quickly as possible. That's the only way I can envision that we're going to be able to get these students a recorded lesson every day. Even if they were a day behind with the recorded lesson, at least they'd have access to it. It's far from ideal, but it's a step in at least the right direction as a stopgap measure until we get the bandwidth increased.
Rob and Meredith.
Yeah, just to follow up, for many years, the computer software has allowed you to make recordings and just convert it to an MP4 without having to stream it live and record it at the same time. So the question is, and I guess would be for Jack Render, is that do our computers have the ability to actually make a video, save it as an MP4 at a smaller condensed size, okay, and possibly be able to upload it during off-peak hours? Maybe early in the morning, or maybe 3 or 4 o'clock. Many people have left, or there's not such a tremendous demand on the Wi-Fi, or as Bill was referencing, maybe even taking it home. That's the question I have: is can we make the video without the use of Wi-Fi and store it on our computer for later, uploading? And I guess that would be a question for Jack Renda. And I think that's what I was referring to. Is not relying so much on the Wi-Fi as much as relying on the camera and be able to save it on your hard drive.
Meredith?
So if we have some extra time for teachers at the end of the day, because we have this 9th period, and then obviously if they all tried to upload at 9th period, then we'd run into the same problem as we would have the other time. Is there a way that we can stagger the 9th period for teachers? So, I don't want to take anybody's lunch period away, but maybe we can find a way to stagger that. And also, as far as all this internet goes, and you guys know I'm the least technological person out there, it just seems like it's taken a lot longer for us, and many other districts have gotten this done a lot faster. So what is it that's holding us up? Is it money that we all have to vote on and see if we have it? Is it I mean, I know our buildings are old, but so are a lot of other schools. I know we have a lot of buildings, but so do a lot of other schools. I mean, I've looked at other schools who've had this done a lot quicker than us, and I would just like to see us move quicker. So if there's something that we need to figure out on why we're not moving quicker, if it's a board decision, let's figure that out, because what happened today at North was amazing. The emotional change that I saw in my own two children was incredible. The texts that I got where I actually wanted to look at my phone one day this week was amazing. Everyone started with a smiley face instead of the angry emoji. Everyone was beyond thrilled with what our teachers were capable of today. And I know that that was because they weren't in this building, but we have to do better for our students. I know we say we're trying, and I know we say we're going to get there, but September went by the wayside. October is fast, going real fast. And our students, I mean, even our North students now are behind our own East students. They're behind every other district. And yes, I know every district is having problems. They all are. I've seen it on every mom page you can imagine. But I just feel like we can't kick the can. And I know we're not totally kicking the can, but we have to figure out why we're not getting this bandwidth faster, or why we're not getting internet faster, or whatever it is that's holding us up.
So I can jump in and answer that real quickly. The board does not have to currently make a decision. This board or previous boards have made that decision, and monies and resources have been allocated, and it is being built. And the first day, one of my first days here, John took me down to Seneca, I believe, not Seneca, was it Seneca? We were all over, yeah. But we actually went in a closet, like we could see the wire, the fiber, it's being run. We've dedicated millions of dollars in resources in order to do this. So it's there, it's being built, but it's not built yet. The decision to do that, the allocation of those resources came a bit later. So maybe some places were ahead of us, not maybe, yes, some places are ahead of us, but we are getting there. We're getting to that point, and we'll be at that point, from what I understand, from looking at that information and speaking with John and Mr. Renda, that we should be done with this and be able to have Wi-Fi in all our buildings and bandwidth, all these things in the fall of next year. Now, we're not going to wait for the bandwidth piece. What Bill is talking about now and these other things are ongoing.
Right.
But the Wi-Fi in all our buildings, not having to push a cart to get Wi-Fi in a classroom and then someone come and taking it to bring Wi-Fi to their classroom. Those things should end in the fall of next year. And we're going to talk as we move forward around Chromebooks and one-to-ones and things like that. You know, it's very exciting. At some point, we're going to get to those conversations, I know. But right now, those things are in place that we need to have in place. We're getting there. No one wants to hear that, but
I know.
that is the reality.
And I know a lot of it is because of things that happened in the past and we can't go back. But what I'm thinking is, like, I know, like, it just sounds like a very long project, like the fall of next year. So many people's children will have already graduated the fall of next year, and they will have graduated behind the people that they're competing in this world with. And I just think, like, I mean, if it's an 18-month project, is it an 18-month project because that it just is what it is? Why are other school districts able to do that project faster?
They're not doing that
Do we have to bring in a
project,
second company to do
They
it
did
faster?
it a decade ago.
Yeah.
I wish they would have started sooner. If we
Yes.
had
Yeah,
decided that
they're not doing it faster. They did it
They
sooner.
did it a decade ago.
Yeah.
a decade ago. Unfortunately,
But as you said, Meredith, straight ahead, right? Keep plowing straight ahead. Keep moving forward. Let's get it done as fast as we can, and that's what we're working on.
Sarah?
I just wanted to say that some of the teachers are making videos for students on their remote days. Like Mr. Toclato and Ms. Carrieri at Sagamore are doing a fabulous job for their math students, making videos for their remote days. So it is happening. Yes.
It's happening. It's exceptional what a lot of people are doing. It's these pilots that are happening at Linwood, at other schools. If we can build that and replicate it, that's fantastic. Right now, it's great that a handful are, even more than a handful. Let's get everybody doing it. Let's build it across our schools and our district.
Go ahead, Meredith.
are we? So, like you said, most kids, including my own, yeah, I'm calling you out, Tommy and Angelo. Most kids on their day off, they are not following any type of schedule. They'll say, "Oh, my teacher said it's due at 11:59 tonight." So at 11:48, they're scrambling to get their work done, or 10 o'clock, whatever it is. can we keep the spell schedule moving forward for our hybrid students? I know you said October 19th. Can we keep it as of today?
What happened today for North
Right.
is because we were transitioned to distance learning. And all the teachers and all the students and all the resources were dedicated to one thing.
Right.
That can't happen right now, the way we live,
Okay.
with teachers teaching in their regular class and not having the ability, if we can live stream, if we can get there, we can record things, we can put things on. It's not the same as what happened today, but it's closer to it. But unless we're all home or all in, that can't happen unless we are distance learning.
And as Sarah was saying, there are some teachers that do, like my son's math teacher, she doesn't ever teach live. She videos every day they watch a video, including today. And so the kids that are at home are watching the same exact video that the kids that are in school are watching. Now, is she able to accomplish that simply because she's one of very few teachers that are doing it? Like if they all did that at the same time, that's where we would have our
Well,
problem?
if she's trying to create it in school while everyone's trying to do it at the same time, then that is a problem. Yes.
Right.
And but as you mentioned before, we can't stagger ninth period, but we can find windows where people can work and do things.
Okay.
I'm just going to piggyback on what Meredith said is that, and I understand the situation we're in, and the fact that if you look at this, we couldn't do it a decade ago. When we lost $18 million, $20 million a year in state aid. So, we are where we are. We have to think outside the box. We can't wait several months. There are kids that are going to sit the AP exams. There are kids that are taking SATs, that are taking really challenging classes, and we have to think outside the box. We have to get these lessons recorded. Okay, I got to be honest. I got 4 new remote students this past week. I did a video on my phone. It took 30 seconds to upload to my Google Classroom. So the technology is there. If you're not using our bandwidth, the bandwidth's available. The thing is, we have to give the teachers the ability to be able to record the lessons, whether it's through their desktop, whether it's through a Chromebook. If we disassemble some of the computer carts that we have and we put them to use right now at a time of need, whatever we have to do. But we can't wait 2 months. We can't wait 3 months. We can't wait until next year. It has to be done now. We have to think outside the box to do it now.
Yeah, I was talking with staff today around this, the Remote Learning Academy, and said, I think this is a prime example of that, of taking a model that used to be a night school model and applying it here for our remote students. I think is outside the box. Let's figure this out to get this done. I hear exactly what you're saying, and we can certainly look at that. Laura?
So I guess, Rob, so if a teacher set up, like if you set up your phone in your classroom, so our teachers can't do that, right? To record?
Again, they would be wireless. It would be, the phone is difficult, I think, in terms of over our system. Rob, if you're doing that at work, I don't know if you're creating your film, your movie at home or at work or.
You can make a video.
I can make a video of myself right now at the board meeting.
That's what I guess I was
And as soon as I go
asking.
outside, I could upload it to my Google Classroom.
That's sort of what
Yeah.
I'm asking. So like if I videotape myself in a classroom giving a lesson, then when I leave and go home, just hit upload to, so the kids have it. That's, I'm not I'm just wondering if that can work.
Yeah, the issue around that is, again, your phone is not wired. So you're trying to get Wi-Fi. I call our board president all the time. You know where I call him from? I go out in the parking lot because my phone will not work in this building here. And I'm standing in the rain today. I said, I'm standing in the rain so I could speak to you on my phone because it won't work in the building. So there are times it could record. Again, that's something that I'll talk to Jack about. I don't know about the quality of everyone doing a recording from their phone in their classroom and then going out and having it upload.
Because I've recorded, and I know Dana, when we've recorded like the disability awareness presentation, like, I go every year to hear our kids do the disability awareness presentations. That's in the Little Theater. So I record the whole thing and it's on my phone as a video. And I've recorded when our football team won the LIC and they were presented, and I've recorded like here or at North on my phone. I've made videos. So that's why I was asking the question. Because on my phone, I was able to be in North Building or be in here and record.
We could look at getting a device that might hold the phone. Again, these are teachers' personal devices. Yeah, I mean, but again, I hear what you're saying. Start thinking outside the box. We are, and it is something that we can continue to pursue.
Chris, as a teacher, I'd rather record a lesson okay, the capabilities at work to do it,
Mhm.
and go home and just upload it and put
Yeah.
together,
Additional
6
work.
worksheets, grade, put a test. It's a lot easier to do
They
that.
could record, they could
Yeah.
probably record it and just, maybe they wouldn't be able to upload it until.
Right, yeah. That's true.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm in my head, I'm thinking, would I teaching, could I phone? It would work. My phone takes great video.
Jim?
I know my daughter that is, when she's home, if she could, watch the lesson on the days that that would be so phenomenal. So.
Jim Kiernan?
Yeah, listening to this, I'm just confused about one thing. Why so long? I mean, you mentioned that by fall of next year, everything should be pretty much up and running. But I'm not really understanding why it's going to take that long. I mean, couldn't we shoot for the spring rather than next fall?
I would shoot for next month. I know, John knows the history a little better than I do, Mr. O'Keefe.
You do have 2.5 million square feet of building. All the Cat 5 in all of the buildings is being replaced with Cat 6. All new drops in every building, all new access points for the Wi-Fi. There's tens of thousands, literally, of miles of wires to be run. It's an
Right.
18-month project.
But John, let me ask you. The 18-month project on what you just described, is that what the industry is saying it will take them to do? In other words, could that not be sped up somehow?
Well, you got to remember, a lot of the work cannot take place when we're in school. It can only take place off hours and weekends. So you lose all the time that we're open. Work
But-
at school always goes slow because it can only take place when we're not in school.
Right, so it takes place after school.
Right, you have
At
either a
night.
second shift, right?
I have a question.
Yeah, Sarah.
But why can't we just do the middle schools and high schools first? Since those are where we have hybrid and we're having all the issues.
Well, 'cause The project is done in phases, so you have a wiring company that comes in and does all the wiring. Then there's other vendors that come behind them to do different phases of the job. It's not like I'm calling, Acme Wiring and they're doing the whole thing soup to nuts. Different parts are subcontracted out to different firms. So the firm isn't going to come back and forth and back and forth. They come in, they do their piece, then the next guy's going to come in and do their access point piece, and they're going to do their hard wiring piece, then they're going to put in the servers, the switches, and then start
But
converting
if they're
over.
getting paid, why does it matter if they come back separate times?
Because it costs you more.
Okay.
It's redundant labor.
How much more? Like it might be actually worth to spend a little more to get.
You don't
this
have
done
any more
quicker.
money. We're spending the full $8.1 million that we have in the Smart Schools bond.
Meredith?
So that was kind of what I was going to say. Is there, can we go back to the vendor that we're using and say, what would it take to speed this up? And maybe you can present that to us and we can see if maybe it's a workable number. I mean, waiting till the fall of next year for the whole thing to be
You
completed.
can't do a capital project without voter approval. You'd
Oh.
have to go to your voters and get approval to spend that money.
Okay.
Rob?
There's no way around it.
John, do we have the ability to bring in a temporary company create a Wi-Fi spot, maybe in the building where if lessons are recorded, you can go to that Wi-Fi spot,
Yeah, that I
like
don't
an
know.
Optimum,
Like a hotspot?
and then when we're done with, our project, we can kind of just discontinue that service. But we would have a high-speed Wi-Fi spot and maybe where a faculty room may have been.
You do
can
have
go in there
Wi-Fi
with-
in every building. You have Wi-Fi in every library.
And so we have the ability to upload videos if we have to, if we stop at a library.
Your bandwidth can only accommodate about 200 activities at one time.
Okay, and that's why I'm suggesting if we were to bring in an outside company, it's as a temporary service, to increase that bandwidth, as a
Well, the
temporary.
bandwidth has to be increased by installing whatever this new hardware is. I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the word. For us to go from the 2 gig we have now to 8 gig, which is what we're moving to with BOCES, we need to change the hardware that hits each of our buildings that allows the internet to come into them. We don't have the capability of allowing that 8 gig to come in.
And even
The
with a temp-
pipe's not big enough for the
Mhm.
flow. We've got a tiny little pipe and we're trying to push.
I guess what I'm talking about is like what you would get in your house. You know,
Yeah.
I get 100 gigabytes right now with Verizon. Okay. Well, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, 1 gigabyte, which is 100. You know,
Yeah,
99.
I don't know how it
So the
compares
thing is,
to what we have
created
here.
one super hotspot in the building where you can go and upload those videos, you know, quickly.
You can certainly add it to the list to go over with IT.
So,
Meredith first.
so like we were talking about staggering, is there a way that we could ask the teachers to each go to the library and just upload that video that they recorded, whether it's on their phone or whatever? Could they, if they use their phone, or if we got a couple of phones from, for each building that they could use? I don't know. Just trying to think of something like.
I'm going to ask our attorney a question, and don't answer it if, just say that maybe a discussion for another time or another day. Are we asking people to do this, or are we saying people are going to do this?
I'd say this falls squarely within a collective negotiations discussion in an executive session, Mr. Superintendent.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just beat the dead elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. We're talking about spending money on speeding up projects or creating a hotspot. Why aren't we talking about spending money for buying the desk shields, bringing all the kids back, and we don't have this problem anyway? I know that nobody wants to spend money, and I'm the last one to want to spend it, but the infrastructure that we have is not capable, and it's not going to be capable tomorrow, and it's not going to be capable next month and the month after that. And the only thing to get these kids the education that we can provide properly and give the teachers the tools that they need to do it right is to have everybody back in the building. And the only way to do that is to buy the desk shields, which we talked about 2 meetings ago, which would eliminate the 6-foot gap, get the desks closer, put the shields on with the masks, and everybody's back. And if we're willing to spend money on paying people to, move faster doing a project, spend money on a local business, buy the desk shields, and get all the kids back. And we're not talking about this anymore. And then we have the remote academy, we have special ed fixed, all kindergarten through 5th are back, and now all secondary are back. We have clubs starting, we have sports starting, and now all of a sudden we look like a normal school district again. I'm not understanding why we're dragging our feet, and then we can kick the can more and we won't talk about it again. And then we could wait till next meeting when we're still having all these problems. If we're willing to spend money, what's the number on buying desk shields for every secondary student to get everybody back? I still haven't heard a number from anybody on yes or no, can we spend it? Or should we spend it? Is it worth it? Are we going to be closed tomorrow? I don't know what we're doing. I apologize, but I really don't.
So
I know
for
we talked
me,
about it.
for
I
me,
don't-
it wasn't about a number, because they were relatively inexpensive. For me, it was about the practicality of having kids walk around with it. I wanted to hear how other schools that were in that situation where kids had to physically take them from their desk, walk around, what happens in lunch, what happens in those other classes where, you're not sitting at a desk with the sheet. I just wanted to hear what's happening in other buildings where you're now bringing back thousands of students and they have the shields. And if they work, I'm 100%, depending on the number, I just want to make sure before we spend it that it's going to work and that it's going to be practical for the size of our buildings.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you where we work, they have those little things that go on the desks. They stick on each side of the desk. It sits right into it, and they can transport it from place to place. Is it going to be weird to carry it? Of course it is. Is it going to be
So
strange
your
to put it
kids
on the
carry
bus?
it from place to place?
Yeah, they have handles, so that they're easily carried.
So I guess that's my question.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
how does it work?
Is it awkward and weird?
They
Sure it is,
fold
but-
up. I mean, it's not weird if everybody has it. It's weird if you don't have it.
But
In that case.
if the alternative is not providing the level of education that we sit here to provide, I
So-
just think that we need to do everything that we can.
So I have a question. So who answers that question? If we did that, could we bring everybody back? Who are we asking that?
I don't know. We talked
We've
about
been
it
through
two
this
meetings
before.
ago. I don't know.
Because I would love my daughter to be in school every day.
Right.
I just would.
Yeah, no, I would like the kids too. I just want
I've
to make
seen
sure
the-
those
Yeah.
things will allow us to bring everybody back.
I thought we discussed that. If I'm wrong, I apologize for bringing it up, but I thought we discussed that they were approved by the architect, they were approved by the state. it
Right,
was
and then we
really just
never
about
got
whether or
a-
not we decided as a board to just do the elementary ones first. And then we were going to see how that worked, and that's how we got those kids back in that were remote that came back in person. That's how we were doing it. We were putting the desk shield
And then
up.
I asked
we
if we
we-
could roll it out through sixth grade so that at least we had sixth graders back
Let's just
in.
rip the Band-Aid
But
off.
really, I think it should be for everyone. What is the hurdle? I know lunch was one of the things. When I brought up sixth grade, we brought up lunch. But again, if they have their own shield, I know there's not enough desks. There are tables. I don't, where are we at? What's holding us up?
Can I just
At least as
piggyback
to
on
lunch,
that?
Meredith,
Hold on, let's get
the one thing that was the concern for lunch is that it's mask and shield, not one or the other. So the concern is that if you've got a population demasking, that is going to create space problems that might not exist otherwise. So I think that just to answer your lunch question, I think that was, as I recall it, the conversation about that.
Chris, what's
Could we
some of
take
the
a measure
words
where we,
when feasible?
so now my high
Hold on, we
schooler,
can't have two conversations. I
Sorry.
apologize, Matt. I'm going to let you go in 1 second. Matthew just asked a question. I just want to,
Weren't there words when feasible?
There are a couple of, you all know that we've received a lot of different guidance
All over.
documents, many of them conflicting sometimes between the state and the county and so forth. And the guidance document that we were relying on, and I think other districts have relied on, who have considered the combination of masks and barrier as being the solution to the limit on the 6-foot distancing that has created such a complex problem for all of the districts, because none of our buildings, I'm not aware of a single educational institution who has designed a classroom to accommodate 6-foot distancing for the kind of load that we would have, right? So the thing that was going to permit us to do that was the mask and the barrier in the entirety. So what I think was talked about when we had the Zoom meeting, I believe, the last time, is that, some of those issues related to, passing in greater crowds, common areas, lunch and things like that, were going to create some concerns, as we just discussed. But at least in the classrooms, that combination of mask and barrier is a potential solution to some of the space problems that we have.
and then instead of giving the time to the teachers to update their Google Classrooms, we can use that time to stagger passing times so that we could alleviate the crowds in the hallways, in theory. I mean, I know that they would still show up to a class that there may be kids in, but it would still eliminate the crowding in the hallway itself. And then we could have them stand up against the front board until the next class moves out.
Well,
In theory,
I'm
yes.
just your lawyer, not your facilities person. You've got a team of highly competent, super dedicated, incredibly hardworking
Yeah, and they
administrators here who are doing a fantastic job of exploring every opportunity. And I know, here and elsewhere, we consult religiously with the guidance documents that we have and the guidance that we get from the state, desperately trying to do everything we can to make sure that every child receives the best educational experience that they can. And I know, that your superintendent, your deputy, your assistants are all working tirelessly to do that in every possible configuration. And certainly I think that if masks and barriers are something you want to look at and consider, that's certainly an option. But I think that there are also options that are being presented to you in the interim that we might be able to put together quickly to continue on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, to continue to improve what's happening. That's what I'm hearing, at least.
Sarah?
I just have a question. Say we did bring everybody back. Would that increase our chances of being shut down quicker if we have like 1 or 2 cases, rather than having the hybrid model where we have a case and we still stayed open, like St. Jim East?
So you want me to answer that? I will.
Yeah, I don't want you to answer.
Yeah.
It's
No.
It's hypothetical, so.
So what's happened at North is we have half a cafeteria, right?
Mhm.
Half the kids in. And because one child is in that cafeteria, or 2, amongst dozens of other youngsters and 7 staff members, because they had their masks off for lunch, they put all of those kids out. So this is the several hundred kids and couple dozen staff that they were putting out from North yesterday, when we were looking to come back in person because of the lunchroom. So there's guidance about 6 feet. There's guidance about masks. The Department of Health is being extremely cautious and continues to put kids out, even if they are 6 feet, even if they are masked. Teachers in front of the room are being put out when a child is in that room, 6 feet away, more than 6 feet away, and masked, but they're putting people out. So the guidance has been very strictly adhered to. Not even, I can't say strictly adhered to it because it's beyond. I mean, if they're further than 6 feet unmasked, I don't know why they would put people. So what would happen is you'd have more people going out at one time. And if you have more people going out at one time, the issue becomes the Department of Health does not close buildings. They say to you, hey, you have 500 people going out, kids, and you have 36 staff going out tomorrow. And now you sit there as a superintendent, a principal, say, my gosh, I can't run my building. And that's when a building transitions to distance learning. So yes, if you had more kids in the building, you would have more risk and you'd potentially have more distance learning. I think those are just basic numbers and facts.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
But it could fall back into what happened today, which is everybody went on Google Meet. Everybody was together. Everybody had a good time. It was like almost like the way it used to be, except virtually. So we could transition quickly. We could keep that bell schedule in place and the plan that we had for today and tomorrow and next week or whatever it is. And that would be for whatever, 2 weeks. And then they go back.
You just have to
work.
keep in mind that there are people getting sick and becoming positive that we always worry about as well. It's a concern that potentially more people would get sick. And while kids seem to do well with it, especially much younger, even down at elementary level, well, they seem to be okay with it. The risk is adults that are around them. So you would have more potential out and potentially more cases.
Yes, please.
So this, I guess it's probably a Chris question, and it might be a dumb question, but my son, who's now in 11th grade, has never had a lunch because he has always had to have reteach classes, and so he's always needed that. And I know there's plenty of children who, in the high school level, that don't take lunch to get electives in and to get APs in and all that. Is there any way that we could make it like we drop lunch, we leave a little earlier, and everybody gets back into the building, and then we don't have to worry about, if we have the dividers, we don't ever have to worry about not being masked because nobody's having lunch?
I would say to you that that sounds like something that's not feasible,
Okay.
just reflexively. And I would say to you that I don't think that if you consulted with the superintendent or the rest of the administration that they could recommend that either. And I think a lot of parents would feel otherwise as well. So, again, I'm not sure that that would be the most productive way to direct your planning.
Jim?
Yeah, let me ask this. The shields would not replace masks, right? It has still
Would
have
be
to wear.
both.
Okay. And these shields in high school get carried around from class to class. They get carried on the bus. They get washed by the students or the parents.
That would be the expectation.
I mean,
we're asking parents to take the kids' temperatures at home, so we hope that they're.
No, I'm just trying to picture this in my mind,
Yeah.
and I got to confess, I picture chaos, to be honest with you.
Too.
And I understand that if you told me that we could put these on every desk like the elementary could do, I could see that working.
In other districts, they do that in secondary, and the children actually take a wipe and they wipe it. I know you're not supposed to ask the kids to wipe it, but I have several friends who teach in other districts in
Well, no,
high
my
school,
point is-
and the kids wipe
My
it. It's
point
fixed
is,
to the desk.
if they were stationary, I could understand it and see, less chaos. But I'm having a hard time visualizing Sachem. I know it's a lot bigger than your guys' district, but I could see it turning very chaotic very quickly. And I would actually ask former principals what they think of that.
Chris?
And I think the X factor that I think a couple of people have alluded to is that's the reality now. What happens if the numbers go up and the governor or whoever else says you spent all that money on that thing and it's not a feasible thing later? That's a consideration for you to be concerned about. You don't know. I listened to the governor yesterday, and again, this is not me trying to influence anybody's decision making about anything, but I try to read the tea leaves because we watch His Honor speak, if not daily, frequently. And, he made very direct comments about, I'm concerned about the schools, my word, as vectors for contagion. He talked about the fact that, when the school tries to contain it by closing a particular school, you don't realize that these kids are out playing together, partying together, going and doing all these other activities. And I'm keeping a very careful eye, he intoned. I mean, that was, within that very gloom and doom sort of proclamation. And I don't know if anybody's read the executive order that came out yesterday with all of the enhanced enforcement and punishment provisions for unlawful mass gatherings and things like that. So I don't know, what the future brings in terms of changes in philosophy. One of the other things that the governor said as he spoke is, what do any of us really know about this virus? We think that it doesn't affect young people the same way. So, the things upon which we plan today may not be the things that are realistic tomorrow. And that's just hard to swallow, but
Dr. Calder, you said we have a remote task force that meets regularly to try and improve. Has there been any discussion about possibly creating, bringing these barriers in? And in your opinion, I don't want to put you on the spot, do you think we can do it safely?
Yeah, you're definitely putting me on a spot.
All right, so take that second question out.
Okay, thank you. The task force is really focused on remote teaching and learning, so really not about the partitions or anything like that. And I am always paramount for me is student and staff and adult safety. Always, I'll say that. Mm-hmm. Health and safety.
Anyone else?
In regards
Yeah,
to
I mean, I don't know.
in regards
What
to
we do?
the
We talk and then we don't do anything, and then it's just nothing.
So,
in regards to the guards or regards to overall with the remote learning?
well, I think everything. We've talked in a big circle, it seems like, and I'm sure the people watching us will be very frustrated. So I'll be bold and state my mind. And I would buy the shields. Chris is absolutely right, our attorney, that the governor could change things and tell us, no good, got to shut the place down. It's not going to work. But I think with the lack of direction we're getting, seeing the damage it's doing to our student body and to the community at large, I, for one, would buy the shields, which is what many of us wanted to do back at the end of August. I would put them on the desks or have the students carry them. That's an option, right? In my school, we just transitioned to where now they're permanently on the desk. So students don't have to carry them anymore. But if you're a nervous student and you're afraid that somebody else's shield is contaminated, you still reserve the right to carry your own shield. So your option. So we could go that route. There's cleaning supplies. If you wish to clean it, you don't have to clean it. That's completely up to you. But I, for one, would love to get all of these students back in the building. At this point, there's a risk in every single thing we do.
Yeah.
And I would say I'd have to take that risk at this point and do that. And the downside to that, of course, is potentially being shut down. But if that happens, now that we've shown at North, we can have what is I don't want to call it anything near normal, what is an acceptable substitute for an instructional day. That's what we would fall back on. We would go to live instruction, teachers teaching from their homes to the student body, which is better than the hybrid model, I believe, that we currently have, because we don't have the capacity for teachers to stream a lesson live. That's the Achilles heel.
Yeah.
If we could stream live, the hybrid model would work. The fact that we can't, these kids are, in fact, getting, many of them, not all, because some teachers are figuring out ways to do this. But unfortunately, too many teachers don't have the ability to do this, don't maybe know how to do it, perhaps don't want to do it. I don't know what it is. I can't say specifically. But we know now they could teach from home. I would rather buy the shields, mount the shields, bring them all back, and see where it goes. We're never going to get an answer to this. We need to make a decision.
Yeah.
And
Is that, you making a motion, Bill?
I'll make a motion to do that then, if that's where we are.
Yeah,
Get
actually,
a second first and then discussion.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'll second.
Fine. Second by Meredith. Any questions? Discussion? Matthew?
yeah, I mean, actually, now, as Bill was saying it, I'm like, yeah, wait a minute, why can't they be stationary on the desks? It's not like the kids they don't carry around their desks, so they're sharing the desks. So yeah, let's make them permanent so they don't have to carry them around.
I think the initial concern was around the breathing on it and then leaving that behind for someone else to come. I would imagine that's why they came up with the plans around taking it with you everywhere. So it was yours, your breath on it, your fingers on it.
Yeah, but one might argue, when they put it on the floor, when they're putting it outside on the bus, I don't know. One might argue that's dirtier than. And again, you have the cleaning supplies. Every classroom in our school has cleaning supplies. So if a student walks in and he wants to clean the desk, they do it.
Jim?
Yeah, on a discussion, John, can you give us a cost of that motion?
What are we costing out?
The number of desk shields that would be required
All
to
secondary.
open a secondary school, I guess, right, Bill?
Secondary, if you were buying them for all the desks, off the top of my head, you probably have 11,000 desks at secondary level. It's not the 6,000 kids. You have a lot more desks than you have children.
Wouldn't we just be buying them for the children?
You just buy them for the children. That would work.
And
You
then we
buy them
let-
for the children, you got 6,000 kids ballpark, right? It's about $140,000.
We haven't purchased the elementary ones
We
yet.
have not purchased any yet.
Right, we're moving in that
And I would
direction.
assume that we would need some extra ones in case they break, in case.
So you would
someone
have to
forgets
do-
it,
They
so-
do have a lot of breakage.
Buy them for elementary as well.
Yeah, 200, let's say.
Well,
let's
if you
just-
wanted 12,300, which is how many students you have, that's $283,000, so 300 grand.
That's for high school and elementary?
That's for every student.
We don't need, we don't need elementary.
We would
Well,
only need the elementary, but we need.
You will need some for
We need
elementary.
some.
Yeah.
So,
But we're saying at the top,
Yeah, we're saying if we
the
did.
highest.
the high end would be 300. Okay, so there's
Yeah,
a
the-
motion and a second.
Jim, I don't know if Jim was done, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you, Jim, I'm sorry, Rob.
Yeah, look, I know I was one of the people that back in August wanted to do this, and I don't have a problem with this because I see the effect that it has even on my own children being home 3 days a week. It is a problem. You know, they're 97, 98 student, average, and they're struggling. They're struggling to learn this way. The other thing I would want to say is let's put some protocols in place so that we're not stacking desks overly close to each other. Maybe look at the Massachusetts model and say, look, we're going to keep desks, no less than 3 feet. Okay. But I also think we should probably have some target numbers for some of the classes. So we're not putting 25 kids in a class. Let's still keep the classes manageable. Okay. Let's still keep them distanced a certain, we can be less than 6 feet. Okay. With the shields and the mask. But I wouldn't, my class and my desks are usually right up against each other. And I don't suggest that we do that. We still take the precautions and put the safety and the welfare of our students and our teachers as our number one priority. So I'd want to see protocols in place if we're going to do this. And I have no problem supporting it tonight.
Would we have to reschedule that then? Schedules would have to be redone then if you want a certain couple of classes.
Yes, we'd certainly have to look at the class sizes at the moment.
And how would lunch work? That's my question too. How would lunch work?
Yeah, we'd have to look into it. I can't imagine you can answer it now.
Yeah, we'd have to come up with a plan and a proposal. We'd talk to our administrators, talk to the teachers.
Yeah, in your defense, you didn't know that I was going to say that tonight, so. I didn't- I
yeah.
didn't know
We'd
that
also
out
need the
field, so-
desks back in the classroom to
The desks
have
are
the
scattered
students
all
back
over
from the
the
cafeteria.
district, right, and many in the cafeteria.
Yes.
So you would have regular cafeteria tables. Kids would, I guess, carry their own guard and then set it up in front of them and take
Or
it
we
with
have
them.
them preset in
Or
the
have them
cafeteria
preset.
along
We
the
could put the
tables.
plastic pieces there and they could bring their own guard and put it there. Or have them set there.
Have
Buy-
them set
Purchase
there,
ones. Yep.
Because they're not going to be carrying
So
them
you
if we have
purchase
them on every
additional
desk.
ones. Right. Where does the $300,000 come from if it's not budgeted? We just have to, right? I'm just looking where Joe was sitting before.
We have to go to other account codes within the budget. I mean, the one thing that you have to keep in mind, and often people forget this, is you have two budgets. You have an expenditure budget. The voters approved us spending $333 million. I can easily find $300,000 in that budget. The problem you have is you also have a revenue budget to pay for those bills. I do not believe that $330 million is coming to us. So I realize the importance of spending this money, but we do have to be cautious because at the end of the year, certainly there could be a large utilization of fund balance to balance out the budget for the year.
John, didn't we receive some CARES Act money? Did we use all of that?
CARES Act is already folded up and they're starting from scratch. New York State, their application to the federal government was rejected.
So we got nothing.
No, nobody got anything.
Okay.
We were awarded potentially $1 million, but that's not extra money. That's money in place of money that's being withheld as part of the 20% holdback. It's not
On top
additional
of-
money.
Okay.
But right now, New York State is reapplying, and we'll have to put another grant application in once they figure out, the process again. But right now, we've spent the money. The money's gone. No one's reimbursing us for it.
I just want us to be conscious of the fact that anytime we add for anything, whether it's this or a club, we're going to add a club, right? We're going to add anything. just make sure where's that coming from? What's going away so that can come in, because we can't just add to the budget. That's all.
Laura? It's going to Laura, Jim, and then Meredith.
So, John, you answered part of my question is where is the money coming from? Because again, we just had the report from an auditor. I 100% believe all kids should come back to school, but I would defer to Patty and Dr. Pilateri and your team to tell us, is it feasible for the lunches, for, like Rob said, not having desks on top of each other, but we're not going to be able to hire more teachers, you know what I mean, or break more sections. So I want to make sure before we just say, go buy this, John, then we have them, and then certain things aren't feasible, and we're sitting here discussing, well, now it's not feasible. So I'm 100% for it. I'm 100% paying the $300,000 to get our kids in school, but I just want to make sure we have a plan. Like a lot of times, part of our problem is we didn't have a thought out plan. So I want to make sure we have a plan. We're going to buy these. This is how we're situating the classrooms. This is how we're doing lunch. This is how we're doing the electives, all the other things. This is how we're doing passing time. This is how we're bringing our kids back safely with the shields. And this is the money that we're spending to get it done. So not just saying, go buy the shields and then we'll figure out everything as it goes along. Let's have a plan and tell us it's going to work. That's all.
But even with the shields, when you're in lunch with the masks off, if I'm not mistaken, the children still need to be 6 feet apart.
Correct. So that's what I'm saying. So what's
we
the plan?
still need the desks then in the cafeterias to socially distance the children. We don't have enough space for them.
This,
Jim, Meredith, and you, Bill. I'm sorry.
All right, so
what I would suggest is, obviously, there is a lot of feasibility questions that have to be answered from the superintendent and the staff, and certainly the high school administrators. So I would make a recommendation. In fact, I'll make a motion to table this motion, like to get that information and bring it back at another time, ASAP. So I'll make a motion to table Bill's motion.
Can we finish the conversation first, and then we'll go from there?
Sure.
Okay. And then I'll call the motions. Please.
So then that was kind of what I was going to say is I definitely want every child back in school. And there have been other districts where the board has tasked the administration, this is a date that we want you to work towards getting every child back in school. So rather than us make this decision right now as a board, maybe it would be better if we said we would like to task our administration with getting every hybrid child back in school by a target date, and we can decide what that target date is, because the lack of Wi-Fi, we can't go back. We can't change decisions that were made 10 years ago. We can't change whatever the governor did and took money from our pockets and from our children, as he tends to want to do all the time. So what we have to do is, moving forward, figure this out in a reasonable manner. And believe me, I'm the most emotional, passionate person and make decisions sometimes. I mean, I was willing to take lunch away from every kid. Why not? So let's figure it out. I mean, that could also be one of the things. Maybe kids will elect not to have lunch and leave a little bit earlier, staggered times. Like maybe staggering these things will help. We got to figure it out, though. So can we task them with?
If you'll allow me to do, rather than say, get it done by this date, allow me to go back with the team and the administrators and folks and teachers. Obviously, a lot of staff would have to be at the table, but let me go back and do a feasibility study to see when we think we could pull something like that off, as opposed to go out and buy them or have it done by November 1st or whatever that is. Let's go back and be thoughtful about it and get pricing and make sure that we're getting a product that's a good product. Like let's do it right.
Bill?
So just a couple of things. I agree. We definitely don't want to buy something and then, just figure it out on the fly what exactly it is we're going to do. But we do need to move with all deliberate speed. The clock is ticking, as Meredith said before. We're losing a lot of time, and these students are losing a lot of education. To Rob's point, I understand, Rob, what you're saying about the protocols. I don't know how far we can distance desks. I would imagine it would be a reasonable amount of distance like it was before. It would probably be a little bit more. We could force outside desks to the wall, that sort of thing. So that would clearly give us more room, I think, just to reconfigure rooms a little bit. We may not be able to get it to, 4 feet or something like that, but I think it would be reasonable. I would hate to be held up because I think even the rooms under their original configurations, when you add a shield and you add a mask, I think we've been pretty redundant at that point and done what we need to do. So I'm not sure what we need to do there, but the lunch clearly I think is the biggest concern. And I would just say regarding that, John had a question for one thing. We do not possess enough desks. We don't have enough in inventory to leave desks in the cafeteria, do we?
Not for the 5 buildings, no. I mean, we have spare desks, but not to that quantity.
But not enough. So that's a potential issue for us. So maybe we could perhaps, I don't know how we're using our auditoriums now, for instance, right? Using, the lower gyms in some buildings, that sort of thing. I would say, look, whatever we could do to give children the space they need, adequate space for lunch, I think we should do that. We should be using every other space we can on warm days. If we have to have kids sitting outside on benches on the grass, we should do that, which we're not going to have many of those at this point, but who knows, this could be going on in the springtime as well. So for me, once again, I want them back. I want to do this. I'm committed to this. I know many of you are committed to it as well. I don't think Meredith's idea about putting sort of a timeline on it is necessarily a bad idea. And I also don't want to distract everybody from the important work that I know they're doing, try to work out the remote things and everything. But the remote thing, quite frankly, or not the remote thing, I should say the hybrid thing is not working. And it's not going to work. It's just not. All right. We need to accept reality there. There's no way to speed up the internet service and that sort of thing, which would make it work. So this is it. This is, I think, what we have. If we're committed to it, let's commit to it and let's figure out how to quickly do it. The parents in this community, as all of you know, are getting incredibly frustrated. They don't understand why we can't move forward. I'm sure right now, based upon what I've told them in the past, people I've spoken to, they're saying, you told me in August you wanted to do this and you couldn't, and now you're saying you can. Well, this is the shifting ground beneath our feet that everybody is getting to witness. But we have to be, I think, bold, make a move, and commit to it, and work out the details on the lunch. That's our biggest problem, I think. If there's another problem beyond lunch, Dr. Pelletieri, John, if you could point it out, if we're missing it, that would be great. But that seems to be the big impediment at this point. All the other things should work.
I think lunch was always the biggest problem, which is why secondary was been hybrid from the start. There just isn't enough room, and obviously also the amount of children on the bus. But
Yeah.
I believe all the secondary gyms, the smaller gyms, are already lunchrooms.
North just got their back gym available to them again.
Yeah,
And
but once that
at-
closes for construction,
yeah, and
that'll
at-
be closed
At
down.
East, they're using it as a classroom.
Meredith?
So on our tour, there it seems to be extra space, and I don't know if I'm even supposed to say this, but at East there seems to be a tremendous amount of extra space on this 3rd floor. When we toured before the buildings opened, I don't know if that's even feasible to ask to be used, but I'm sure that we could probably look into that. Also, I know we never like to compare ourselves to other districts. We like to be the leader, but in this, we're clearly not leading the way right now. So I think that what we should do is reach out to other districts and see how they're doing it. I know Massapequa seems to be doing a pretty good job. I know we have a ton of teachers. Our parents in this district are teachers in other districts, and they are emailing us, telling us how they're doing it. I think one of the things that we failed to do is we failed to reach out to our community members who do teach elsewhere and ask them how they're doing it. Some other school districts are not doing it. Some other school districts haven't even brought their K-5 back full-time. So, but there are other districts that are doing it, and they're doing it well, and they have their hiccups too. And I know that we are our own animal because we're such a large district. And so things that we would consider a major hurdle, other places just cruise on by. But I think that asking other districts and asking our parents who are teachers elsewhere to maybe email us their ideas and get involved, and maybe, I don't know, if there's some type of a, I hate to use it again, but task force that we could, of parents who are teachers in other districts where it's working. And, we can rack our brains all day, but if somebody else is already doing it and it's working, Why not emulate it?
Yeah, that would be part of our feasibility study, would be to reach out to districts that are doing it about to do it as well. So without a doubt.
Any other questions? So if we table it, I mean, I don't want to put pressure on you guys. You've been working incredibly hard for long hours, and so have the building principals with all of this contact tracing. I don't want it to go longer than our next meeting. And I know that that's a very short period of time, but I would be nervous of waiting until November, December, January to do this.
Yeah,
We'll
go back and take a look at it and come up with a date where we feel we can make a proposal to the board. Speaking of working hard, I mean, our personnel, Kristen Capel-Eden, Andy Larson, these people barely work for this district anymore. They're paid by this district, but they don't really work for this district anymore. They work for the Department of Health. And I have great respect for the Department of Health and what they're attempting to do there. But Kristen works 7 days a week now, all day, through the night, reaching out to people for contact tracing. I mean, that's what she does, works with the Department of Health. That's what she does. And her work is now being passed off to other people or going, sitting. Andy Larson, principal at North, spent entire weekend, Saturday and Sunday, contacting, talking to families, talking to us, talking to Kristen. It's incredible what's been put on schools now in regards to, and just because you mentioned, the hard work, I just need to mention those people in particular and other people that have been working extremely hard. But there are no more weekends, there are no evenings. It's contact tracing. It's the Department of Health. It's things have to sit because of the situation that we're in now. It's extremely difficult. So thank you. And so we'll get together. We'll meet tomorrow. We'll talk, and we'll try to come up with something that we can say, hey, our next meeting is the 21st, and see if we can't. And I will let you know. I will keep the board apprised of where we are as we move along in that feasibility study.
Jim.
Well, that was going to be my question. So the feasibility study will start tomorrow, and you'll keep us apprised as you go. And then by next meeting, you'll have a total answer, and the board then could act on a motion and do it.
I would hope to have something then. As you know, Chris and I talk a lot. Schedules change, remote learning, hybrid learning, and regular instruction, health and safety. There's a ton going on. So
Nobody
we will.
expected Sachem North to go down a couple of days ago.
Mhm.
Nobody knows what's going to happen in another place. Nobody expected the staff members who were affected and have to quarantine to happen. I mean, I would just say to please, understanding the need of the community and the will of the board to make something happen appropriately, to place an unrealistic burden and deadline on an administration who works 24/7, I think would be somewhat unfair. They'll give you their best effort all the time, but please, for the love of God, they've also got to educate the kids who are here under the program that exists right now. If they pull all of the minimal resources that they have away from what they've got to do, what do you have left? So just, is it, you want it fast or right?
Yeah, I don't by any means want to pressure you to hurry anything along. And I agree with Chris. However, you also see the board's desire to move as quick as possible on it. So I'm not looking for this is the time. I thought you had suggested, if I thought I heard you correctly, that next board meeting you'd have
Yeah, we
something
will
for us.
attempt to do that. I'm just saying that there is a great deal going on that's on a lot of people's plates already. This obviously is vital and important to the board, and we'll move up notches without a doubt. But just recognize that there is at some point there's a scarcity of resources, right? My old economics lessons. So and there are opportunity cost decisions, and what is not being done then in order to do this. But this is a priority. I get it. I understand it, and we'll get the team together and we'll get working on it.
Okay.
Rob?
Just, sorry, Mary, you guys go first.
First of all, I just want to say I do know that you guys work extremely hard, and by me tasking the board with this, it is not taking anything away from all of you. I know we get texts and emails that come to us over the weekends and at obscure hours, and I know that you are all working extremely hard. And I appreciate it, and I appreciate everything that the administration has done. My next question is for Mr. Clayton. At what point does the school district have any recourse to go back to our governor and tell him that he is stealing the education from our children? What can we do? Is there something we can do about it as a board? Because if we ignore his directives, we're in the wrong. But if we don't educate our children, we're in the wrong. So what can we do?
The only recent example that I can share with you was, a request for injunctive relief that actually went to the Supreme Court arising out of California, where individuals challenged the decision-making of that governor, which, parallels a lot of what has happened nationwide as different governors make different executive orders impacting the ability of whether it's restaurants to open, businesses to open, and things like that. There was a challenge to the authority of that governor to do what he was doing. And a lot of what was being challenged was kind of similar to what we see unfolding in New York. And in that request, injunctive relief means that we're trying to say that the thing that the governor is doing is so patently restrictive and excessive and beyond his authority as to, cry for the courts to say, tell him he can't do this now so we don't have to suffer under this order. And Chief Justice Roberts, wrote a decision saying that in a public health crisis, in a pandemic, both the constitutions of those states and the authority of the governor under the executive orders that was awarded to him, that they have those broad powers, and that the court wouldn't substitute its judgment for that of the executive in a case where, it was a clearly proven public health crisis and emergency. So I would suggest to you that, if you take guidance from that decision, which is rendered right in the context of the pandemic, you could look to it to say that at the highest court in the land and the Supreme Court's Chief Justice have said that, essentially the governors are given great deference when they're, exercising those executive powers. As to, specific legal advice about certain challenges and that sort of thing, that's kind of a broad overview, Meredith, of where I see it, but I certainly would want to give you legal advice in executive session about any potential legal action or something like that. But I think, I'd want to put it in context, certainly for anybody who's having the same thought in the public. We can look to that decision for guidance as to where the courts are falling in terms of their assessment of the governor's authority. And in that case, it wasn't Governor Cuomo, but another governor from a major state who is imposing restrictions that are, if you trust the the news reports, very similar to the types of ones that are being imposed here.
Just Dr. Pelletier, at the last meeting we had, you said there was an immediate need at our elementary schools because we're physically out of room, and sections at grade levels can't accommodate and not even a single kid. Do you need authority from the board tonight to go ahead and move with the purchase of those shields so we can take care of that problem at the elementary level where, we may have to, shorten the distance to allow students to be able to return to school from hybrid?
Yeah,
Can
We
do
did that already?
Yeah, I
So
feel
we had-
we have the sense to do that. It kind of slowed for a moment there, so we weren't up against a wall where like tomorrow we have to get these in, but we are right there. So we are working on developing a plan for, like, do we get them for all the elementaries? Do we get them only in those rooms? Do we get them only in those schools? Like, we're working through that piece, but I feel like we have the sense to go ahead and do that. And we just wanted to do it wisely and not buy too many of them.
Well, yeah, I'm not suggesting buying
Yeah.
all in one shop, but,
Mhm.
there might be some sections that need immediate attention now.
Exactly. Yes.
So there's a motion and a second to move forward. There's a motion to table it.
Right.
Until we get the feasibility report.
Need a second.
Second the motion. All in favor of the motion to table, say aye.
Aye.
Tabled. Meredith, was there any, we opened that email address, excuse me. We opened the email address for the BOE public comment. I'm attached to it too. I don't think we received any. And then you already gave the update about Sachem North, but if you want to.
Yes. I essentially did give the update about Sachem North, and we are back looking to be in person on Wednesday, barring any other unforeseen circumstances next week.
Just so that I'm clear, obviously, we're going to move forward with looking at all these items that we discussed this evening. Am I still moving forward looking at the feasibility of this remote academy?
Yeah, I would ask that we continue to, we still need a remote option. We still need, I feel, the remote academy. That is my recommendation, without a doubt. We still need the ability to do the hybrid piece that Bell's schedule, if in fact, for some reason, we feel we're not going to get everybody back and we still need a hybrid piece. I would ask that we still continue down those paths. Again, we keep these two paths, always try to keep our options open. So I would ask that we do that, so John is aware of that and that this board is aware that we're going to move along in those options.
Any issues with either of those, Laura?
So just with the remote academy, even if we bring everybody back, there still might be kids that have anxiety or whatever that don't want to be in school. So we're still going to give them that
I think the
opportunity.
remote is a state mandate that we have to offer it.
We
right? So
have to offer it. That is correct,
Yeah,
right?
the governor was pretty clear that, those who opt not to come in have to have an option, so.
Right.
Okay.
And there may even be more kids that if we do bring everybody back, I know kids that are very nervous in those situations so I think it's even more important that we get our remote academy, that it's working.
This week alone, we had about 15 to 20 additional students per secondary building that chose to go remote since North had the cases.
Oh, I'm sure. I hear it.
All right, we're going to go to page 2, towards the top, letter F, approval of minutes for the September 29th, 2020 meeting. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Sarah, seconded by Laura. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Allison, are there any visitors tonight? Letter 3 is business items, consent agenda A through D. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Rob, seconded by Matthew. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Bottom of page 3, personnel, consent agenda A through I. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Bill, seconded by Rob. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
Dr. Pelletieri?
Thank you very much. I apologize for one moment.
I apologize. Kristen usually tells me to stop. So
Yes,
here I-
yes. So
Somewhere on YouTube, she's telling me to stop.
I just want to come. We just approved the retirement of two of our valuable employees, and I just want to make mention of them really quickly. Virginia Goldhammer, who is a school media specialist, been in our district for 22 years total. Most recently, I believe, at Seneca. Virginia's at Samoset. Okay. Thank you very much. And her work has been exemplary for all of that time. She was a computer aide at Sachem South from 1998 to 2000. And again, most recently at Samoset. We thank her for her 22 years of service to the district. Maria Messina, also, who's a mathematics teacher up at North. She served this district and our students and this community for 19 years. We want to thank her for the countless students that she helped along in their career in terms of mathematics and life. So Maria Messina and Virginia Goldhammer, thank you so much for all you've done for our students and community.
We are at the middle of page 6, personnel, support staff, consent agenda A through C. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Laura, seconded by Bill. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Letter number 6, personnel administrators. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Sarah, seconded by Rob. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Bottom of page 7, contracts, consent agenda A through E. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Laura, seconded by Matthew. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. We are in the middle of page 9, Committee on Special Education, Consent Agenda A through B. Motion by Ms. Volpe, seconded by Bill. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. I apologize. Do I have to do anything for this or no? It says no. Okay. It's highlighted anyway, so I just want to make sure. Jim, any report?
We had a Health and Safety Committee meeting this afternoon by Zoom. Mrs. Trombetta facilitated that meeting. Went very well, discussed the COVID issues on testing and items of that nature. Also, we discussed the district-wide safety plan. And last night, we had the first legislative committee meeting. Dr. Pelletieri was kind enough to stop in and visit us. We discussed the protocols, as I mentioned to the board last board meeting, on how we'll operate as a committee. The most important thing, obviously, is board direction, so the committee has something to work on. So really what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask the members and Dr. Pelletieri if there's anything that you would like the legislative committee to start researching and finding out, how we could help. It's the only way this committee is going to work is if we have direction from the board. So I'm going to ask you, you don't have to do it tonight, but at least by next week to have some ideas for us to work with.
I have 2 suggestions: funding, and also contacting the New York State regents and asking them to waive the regents this year for our students, because obviously they're not getting an equitable education this year.
Well, the funding that's a little open-ended. You got any more, some specifics on that?
I can help, I think. I'll say 3 things: funding, funding, and funding, right? So one of the things I want to talk about is we're about to spend $300,000 because we're in the middle of a pandemic and we need that money back. This is something that we weren't planning on doing. So whether it's the federal government or the state government working in partnership, these types of expenditures in this type of climate, we need resources.
That's good. Thank you. And also the regions thing. Look, I'll get back to you and, I'll bring this back to the committee and I'll get back.
Equity. People want to talk about equity all the time. We believe in equity. We talk about equity all the time. I want technology funds so that I can have more equity for my students in terms of their education.
Rob?
It's an update on the Budget Advisory Committee. I did have a conversation with Nick Bucci, who's the chairperson for that committee, yesterday. They have a tentative meeting date of October 27th at 8 p.m. They're going to do it via Zoom. So they're going to be reaching out to Allison to set up, a Zoom call for the committee. Some of the discussion I had with him was with, try and get caught up on what the committee was working on previously prior to the pandemic. He was able to provide some insight. But one of the requests that, anytime in years past when we started a new year with the committee and there were new members, a presentation was oftentimes provided by Ron Sachs on how the budget works. One of the tasks that this committee is going to be is to really be another set of eyes, to look at the budget that we put forth to the community and either endorse it or make recommendations. The request is to have somebody from the business office, John, if you're available, to kind of go over what the budget codes are, how it's funded, so that when it comes time to delving into the budget, they know exactly what they're looking at, what the codes represent. So I don't know if you're available that night or if somebody from your office that's available at night to be able to present that.
I'm an office of one, so if it's not me, then there is nobody else.
Okay. So is that a yes?
I'll have to take a look. When is it?
October 27th at 8 p.m. And it would be a Zoom call. The scope of that meeting also would be is to kind of get on the same page to see what the committee wants to look at and what they want to work on. But also, the same as what Jim mentioned, looking for suggestions from the Board of Education to go back to the committee and charge them. I know in years past, during the budget process, we focused strictly on the budget as a group. After the budget process was over, there was many projects that committee was working on, looking at the feasibility of implementation of different things, whether it was driving school program here in Sachem or facilities usage. They worked on that a few years back. But that's, I would be looking for input from the board as well.
Anyone else have any updates on? Yep, please.
So as the auditors presented tonight, we had our audit meeting on Monday night, and as John, it went very well. And the issues that we had last year on our extracurricular activities and accounts and all those things have all been corrective. All the corrective actions were put in place. There were no recommendations. So it's the first time in I think it's 10 years I'm on audit committee that we've had a stellar review. Like everything that was asked to be implemented was implemented. During COVID, our business office ran uninterrupted. They were able to do their audits, get all the materials they needed. So just excellent reviews all around on Sachem, and the work that went into putting us in a position where a lot of districts are not in the position we're in, where we now have the reserves that can weather this storm. And a lot of districts are not as fortunate as we are. So I'm very happy to report it was an excellent meeting. And we had a new community member that joined. So we welcomed her, and I think all around it's a very good committee. So
Thank
work,
you, Laura.
John.
Meredith?
I just wanted to put a little input because last night was actually my first night on the audit committee ever. So I guess it was a great night to start. But I really want to say, John, thank you very much for what you've done for this district over the past 4 years. And I know as a board member, sometimes I get an inside look, but really having 2 different audit firms tell us how great of a job was pretty incredible. I'm very proud. Thank you.
Anyone else? We do have a board discussion item on the agenda tonight about the Waverly Fields. I wrote something up just so that we make sure we acknowledge on behalf of the board. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge all of the recent correspondence we have received requesting the district facilitate the use of its facilities to allow students to return to recreational activities. While the legal restrictions and obligations to maintain an appropriate, clean space for academics make the use of interior spaces such as gymnasiums virtually impossible, please be assured that the board and administration are actively and diligently assessing our ability to permit the use of our outdoor spaces for recreational activity. While the pace of this work may not be as swift as some may wish, our focus is to explore safe and legal compliant ways for our students and our community to return to these activities on our fields. Again, I think I can safely speak for everyone when we say that we are aware of how important these activities are to the social and emotional well-being of our students, but there are many restrictions and obligations placed upon the district in the COVID environment, and safety is always our primary concern. Just yesterday, the governor spoke at length about enhancing the enforcement of COVID restrictions and issued another executive order to that effect shortly after. We have heard your pleas. We have read your emails. We know our administration has spoken to many parents and groups as well. We all want what is best for our children. We all want to provide a safe environment for our kids to return to play. We are working on it. We assure you there are also issues that must be discussed in executive session due to legal confidentiality concerns. We ask that you please be patient with us and know that we are doing our best to work towards a safe and compliant return to activities for our kids. Do you have something?
Just a quick question. I know that we've been talking about this for a long time, and I'd like to be able to come to some type of resolution tonight so we can at least give the soccer community an answer. Their season started 2 weeks ago. It ends in the middle of November, so there's only a couple of weeks left in that season. And, they're running out of places to play. So if we can get back to them, come up with an answer and get back to this committee or this group tomorrow, so we could, at least they could have further direction as to, what their options are. That's the other thing I ask. I understand we have to discuss it in exec session, but that's the other thing I ask. The other thing I wanted to say during the update from the superintendent is I know a couple of weeks ago we asked about clubs, okay, and we spent a tremendous amount of time in the remote, which is fine, but I missed that section of it. And any, as far as the clubs, Dr. Pelletier, have there been any club fairs with regards, seeing what the interests are of the students and how if you could just give us an update on that, the clubs?
Sure. Signups are ongoing. The clubs are working on their charters because there are different means by which they're going to meet: in person, hybrid, Zoom. All that is ongoing. All that is moving forward. And all that will be, I believe, on the approval for expenditures at our next board meeting.
Next board meeting. So,
Yep.
So there's been fairs and whatnot as far as.
I know that Mrs. Hines was working with the principals and the advisors around starting to get the kids signed up for the clubs.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Our next meeting will be Wednesday, October 20th. I'm sorry, Bill, please.
I was a little confused because we went on to something else, but I wanted to just say something about SYSL. I know you read that letter. We all received many emails this week from some of the families of SYSL. I know we're probably all very sympathetic to their plight. We want kids to be playing on our fields. One thing that I'm hoping that some of the families are listening to tonight as I say this is that in many of their emails, they cited that this land that the Waverly Fields are on was donated to the Sachem School District with the expectation that it would be used to further, the community and the children of the community. And that information appears to be false. And I think it's important that get clarified because many of the emails have the tone that somehow the land is being misused when it was intended to be used for the purpose it's being used for, which is SYSL to play sports on. So a number of years ago, we came in possession here on this board of the deed in 1970 when the land was purchased, in fact, by the Sachem School District. And by my estimation in reading that deed and reviewing it again, this school district paid $250,000 in 1970 for the Waverly Fields from the Keeble family. They were not donated, so people shouldn't think that they were and think that maybe that's cause for the fields to be used in whatever way SYSL perhaps thinks that they should be used. And just for fun, because it's what I do, I decided to run a little inflation calculation and figure out what that means today. So that's about almost $1.7 million in today's dollars. So it wasn't a deal. All right. It was a land transaction, and that's an asset of this community. And the reason that asset is in our possession is to make good use of it for this school district. And a good use, I think, could be for somebody to use it for sports. But we need to make a decision how to generate revenue off that field at the same time, which is how we got to where we are. So I just think it's important that people be aware of that. We're not trying to take anything away from anybody. We're not reluctant to let people use the field. But we have to manage the asset appropriately, especially in a time when every little bit of money we have is about to matter a great deal. We're going back. We're going back to where money was really tight. So those are some of the things I think behind the scenes that it's worthwhile for the community to know. No one's looking to punish anybody or take anything away from the kids. But that was a piece of information that was out there that was incorrect, that as best I can tell from what I've seen, needed to be corrected.
Matthew?
I hear what you're saying, Bill. But Sachem owns that property, right? Right? Sachem owns it now. Sachem kids, for the most part, are the ones using it through that soccer organization. And I don't have kids playing soccer, so I don't have a dog in that fight in that way. But the families, if we charge too much money on for those fields. Can I talk about this? Oh, I want to get our kids back on the field. That's all I want to say. Let's get them back on the field. Let's go.
Just one thing. And just to I don't want to be argumentative, but I think they're getting their information from the Farmerville Historical Society. We received an article that basically said in 1976 it was donated. So I don't know if part of it was donated. I don't know if the Historical Society's got it wrong. I would imagine, it was 43 years ago. We might still have something on file here. But I didn't download the deed. I didn't, do a search for it. If it was something that was donated, that wouldn't represent that it would be used for community service in the deed. It would just be a donation, a donation of property or sale of property. But I think that's where the information is coming from, is that it's actually posted on the Farmerville historical site.
It appears to be incorrect, that's all. Unless I have a copy of a bogus deed, it appears that information is incorrect. I don't think anybody did it intentionally. circulating, it should be correct.
So maybe just because this has come up before, and again, the copy of the deed that Bill saw or I saw maybe is incorrect and, it's not the correct deed. So I know when this came up once before, we had discussed maybe just having a title search run just to see. So this way there's clarity. And again, it doesn't matter because Sachem, it's still a Sachem asset. So we would still want Sachem kids, but what has been said to me through text, through calls, through things is just that it was donated with a covenant on it that it's to be used for Sachem kids to play soccer. So I think that that's part of the confusion that's out there. So, if we just had clarity on that, and again, not that I don't want Sachem kids to play soccer on the fields, but just that, one organization thinks that it was donated specifically for them to use versus a Sachem community use, I think could give clarity for everybody. So there's not, the tone of the emails where this was given to us to use for our purpose. And that could maybe alleviate some of the negative feelings that have happened.
So if that were something that the board wanted to explore, we could talk about that as a resolution. Obviously there would have to be authorization of the board to retain that professional service and to engage to have that title search done. So that would be something you could decide to do.
We've been talking about title searches for 3 years. Okay. And the thing is that these kids are missing out. Okay. Last week or 2 weeks ago, we had a discussion about how important sports and activities are for kids in their social emotional piece. They're Sachem kids. As Matt said, taxpayers, okay, pay for taxes. Our revenue comes from state aid and it comes from taxpayers. It's the only two sources it comes from. Okay. And when we look at our tax bill, and I have my tax bill on me, I pay almost $8,000 a year in school taxes. Okay. That school taxes goes to operating costs. It goes to salaries. It goes to a lot of different things. Okay. And one of the things that it goes to, the property belongs to the taxpayer. And their children should have the opportunity to be on that. And I guess we'll discuss that in executive session.
Right.
But I don't remember any
100%
tones
agreed
that
with
said
you.
it was donated specifically to soccer. Every email I said that I read said it was donated for community use. That's every email. I didn't see anything that said specific soccer.
I'm saying specifically to me. Okay, because when I say it could be community use, it means like any of our community groups, whether SIAG, SSC, because they're all taxpayers too. And they all, yeah. So I'm just saying it could be any community use. I more than anybody know how important sports is, and I want kids to be out on the fields. So
Chris, with due respect, I'm not voting to spend any money on a title search. I don't know how anybody else feels.
No, I wasn't asking you to. I was just making note that that's what would be required if that's what you wanted to do.
I'm not going down that road. Okay.
it doesn't matter.
Okay.
I'm saying if everybody wanted clarity to know.
Yeah. Oh.
But
Anyone else? Our next meeting is Wednesday, October 21st at 7:30. Can I please have a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing the employment of a particular personnel, collective negotiations, and the sale or lease of real property? Motion by Meredith, seconded by Laura. All in favor? Good night, everyone. Thank you very much. Be careful going home.
Laura, on the special ed piece, Dennis just clarified, so the teachers are gonna get a grade level, and they're working with the ICT 15, 1, and 12 ones in that grade level, but they'll be group reporting in there.